my brother Anakin. I loved you.
Hey guys, welcome back to Star Wars Canon. Got a couple of different little news stories for you today. The first one's real quick. The Kenobi series is actually being pushed back, only by 2 days, not a big deal. Actually, Star Wars themselves put out a video earlier today where Ewan McGregor came on screen and basically thanked all the fans for the overwhelming support they've already gotten. And then he explained that they're going to be bumping that Kenobi premiere from Wednesday, May 25th, until Friday, May 27th. Again, only 2 days, and the trade-off is the first 2 episodes are going to premiere together. Now, I don't know why they're bumping it from Wednesday to Friday. It only seems like, 2 days, so I don't think it's something like production or anything like that. I mean, I know a lot of us are hoping that the Grand Inquisitor gets a little bit of a facelift, literally, but 2 days doesn't seem like enough time for that type of thing. It seems to me like maybe they're just hoping for a weekend premiere, Friday night as opposed to the middle of a week. Anyway, not a big deal, just thought I'd let you guys know about that. If you want, you can check out StarWars.com's video. I'll actually link it down below. Today we actually got our first excerpt from the upcoming novel Brotherhood by Mike Chen. This is a novel that's going to look at the brotherhood between Obi-Wan and Anakin. It's actually going to take place after Episode 1 and after Episode 2, but before the beginning of the Clone Wars TV show. And you can see from the title right here, Obi-Wan Kenobi is going to meet Asajj Ventress for the first time in this excerpt. Now, in the very opening scenes of the Clone Wars, Obi-Wan and Anakin clearly already know who Asajj is. They actually run into her on Christophsis, and you can tell that not only do they know who she is, they've clearly already got some running jokes, so they've had quite a bit of interaction before. So this excerpt is actually going to be the first time they meet, because we actually never see that in either Clone Wars TV show. Alrighty, right here, we've got the cover art for the upcoming novel Brotherhood. It's nice. It's real simple, nothing we really haven't seen before. These are actually images from Episode 2 of Obi-Wan and Anakin, but any chance to see these two together again is great by me, so I get excited when I see this. The only thing that I maybe wanted to bring up here was actually, if you look over here to the left, a big portion of this novel is going to be set on Cato Neimoidia. Now, if you remember, that's the home planet of the Neimoidians, like Newt Gunray, Lot Dodd, all those guys. The cities on Cato Neimoidia are actually pretty unique. They're built on suspension bridges that are hanging between mountains with giant chasms down below them. Obviously, that lends itself really well to some pretty epic stories, so I'm pretty excited to see what's going on here. Also, there's that ambiguous line from Obi-Wan at the very beginning of Episode 3.
All right. Well, you owe me one, and not for saving your skin for the 10th time.
9th time. That business on Cato Neimoidia doesn't count.
Maybe we'll finally learn what this meant, because there are some scenes with Cato Neimoidia in the Clone Wars TV show, but as far as I can remember, we never really see Anakin saving Obi-Wan's butt on Cato Neimoidia. In fact, it's actually Ahsoka who saves Anakin's butt on Cato Neimoidia. So, I don't know. I guess we'll see what's going on. Alright, and real quickly before we get to the actual excerpt itself, I wanted to read a little introduction they've given us here. So, they say, Obi-Wan Kenobi meets Asajj Ventress in Star Wars Brotherhood exclusive excerpt. Can the Jedi win over the Separatist assassin in their first encounter? Well, obviously not, because we know what's coming down the road, right? Obi-Wan Kenobi and Asajj Ventress have been enemies and uneasy allies. And if you remember, this uneasy allies reference right here is referring to that time when Asajj Ventress and Kenobi actually teamed up to take on Maul and Savage Opress.
Kenobi, don't tell me someone's finally knocked the fight out of you. Wake up!
Ventress?
It looks like I'm here to rescue you.
When did you become the good guy?
Don't insult me.
Ah, what a lovely sight to wake up to.
Don't flatter yourself, Kenobi. You've never been much to look at, especially now.
The Witch and the Jedi. Here for our taking.
I want that back.
That's fine. Red's not my color. Ready?
Like you even had to ask.
That's one of my favorite episodes in the Clone Wars. It's fantastic. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. And soon we'll learn about the genesis of their strained relationship as the secret Sith apprentice to Count Dooku and Kenobi are both called into action on Cato Neimoidia. In the first excerpt to be released from Star Wars Brotherhood, the new novel by Mike Chen arriving this May, the Night Sister and the Jedi Knight join forces to survey the damage to the wealthy colony world. Now, this makes sense that there'd be a lot of damage on Cato Neimoidia, right? We saw this in some Legends novels like Labyrinth of Evil, though it's no longer considered canon. But again, being the homeworld of the Neimoidians, and obviously a big part of the separatist movement, it makes sense that during wartime there'd be a lot of damage to the planet. Now we get to the excerpt itself, and you have to forgive me, I'm definitely no voice actor, so I'm probably not even going to try. "This is interesting," the woman said. She stood up, her cloak flowing back down to rest, and she presented the device in front of the gathered Neimoidians. "I've never seen such elaborate plating on a scanning device. It was custom, a gift from a friend. Consider it," Obi-Wan said, "a bit of a lucky charm." She tapped a finger against the underside where the alloy case attached before coming back to Obi-Wan, holding it up as they met face to face. "It's very pretty. I didn't know Jedi cared for such flamboyant things. Sentimental value." "A sentimental Jedi," the woman smiled, the harsh lines of her tattooed face bending in unnatural ways. "I think we'll be friends. Perhaps you can have it when I'm done with my investigation. It would be a lovely accessory. And look, it's even my color." She put the device back into the crate, then clamped the lid shut. "The Jedi is clean," she announced, her long cloak whipping out to reveal a hint of a skirt underneath as she turned on her heel. "Come, emissary," said Minister Iam. "We will send your belongings to your quarters. This shuttle," he gestured to a small transport craft on a connected smaller platform, one likely used for city-to-city vehicles, "will take us to the disaster area." They walked in silence, though Obi-Wan noticed the mystery woman matched his exact pace stride for stride. "I'm sorry," Obi-Wan said. "I didn't catch your name." "Ventress," she said. "Asajj Ventress. A pleasure to finally meet a Jedi. Count Dooku speaks so highly of your order." They started with the formalities, a basic tour of the government offices and the most notable landmarks of Zara, the brightly lit mix of business and artistry, from the hanging towers below the capital's biggest stone archway to the open-air Grand Theater of Judgment, where trials and debates took place. The cityscape looked truly gilded from the air, designs and architecture unique to the culture and unlike anything else Obi-Wan had seen in his journeys across the Republic. Elegant and sophisticated in ways far different than, say, Naboo, while still taking advantage of the planet's unique natural wonders, structures jutting out in directions simply impossible elsewhere. The tour itself was short-lived, and soon they soared through the rolling fog of Cato Neimoidia, a long descent that revealed just how high up the rocky spires of this world were. Though he had watched holos showcasing the topography of the planet, none of it did justice to the overwhelming girth. No wonder they had the ability to anchor entire cities. "It's quite majestic, isn't it? Have you ever seen anything like it?" Obi-Wan said, a strategic question to goad the mysterious Ventress into revealing more about herself. "Not in person." "I have not either. I've traveled the planets with all forms of environmental oddities, but nothing quite like this." She shook her head with a breath, then straightened up. "Let's dispense with the pleasantries. You wish to ask me something, Kenobi?" Her direct line of questioning caught Obi-Wan's diplomatic sensibilities off guard. Perhaps that was by design, given her demeanor. "I'm trying to be polite." Obi-Wan tilted forward in his seat. Around them, the Neimoidians remained silent, though he was certain they listened. "Unless you feel like you have something to hide." "Something," Obi-Wan said. Suddenly, all of that experience strategically arguing with Anakin proving fruitful, that makes you untrustworthy? Ventress's head tilted as she bit her bottom lip, a huff of amusement coming out just enough for Obi-Wan to hear. In fact, the other passengers may have missed it. "While my master has great respect for your order, he also understands that it is the political tool of the Republic. If you recall," she gave a knowing nod, "that is one of the reasons he left it." She referred to Dooku as master. Was that an intentional representation of hierarchy within the Separatist leadership, or a slip revealing something further? "Fair point. Because of that, he has sent me to oversee your investigation and interactions with the Neimoidians." She sucked in a breath, holding it as if to tease him. to ensure that there's no evidence of corruption. Her eyes locked with his, a menacing leer that felt as much a dare as a threat. Fortunately, Obi-Wan had dealt with worse. He did, after all, see Anakin through some very turbulent teenage years. Well then, he responded with a tense calm, presenting an equally lengthy pause. Then his tone retreated, going back to the standard diplomat's voice, as if he were simply talking to another politician on Coruscant. "I look forward to working with you," he added, putting his hand out to shake, in good faith. She looked at his outstretched hand, then back up to read his face. He responded in kind with a polite smile and waited without any movement, like an AI hollow awaiting input before animating its canned response. "Likewise," she finally said, taking his hand. The damage was worse than Obi-Wan had expected. They started with an aerial view, constantly circling as the Neimoidian inspector explained the disaster simulation they'd created to get a sense of how the entire structure fell. Speed, angle, tilt, how fires from the initial explosions spread to other areas, the way those fires then weakened other structures prior to impact. And though Ventress presented a cold and unmoving front, he noticed that the air shifted around her when the inspector described the way bodies were flung out from the structure during its nosedive to the planet's surface, and in very pragmatic terms when he described the radius around the structure in which corpses had so far been recovered. And that was just the first pass. The closer they got, the more unsettling the visuals were, from the still smoking fires to the imploded buildings, the crumbled remains of their gold plating reflecting the licks of flames. By estimates, we have recovered about a third of the bodies so far. Were there any survivors? Yes, luck was on their side. Our analysis team wants to discuss their circumstances with them to see if they can identify a pattern, some type of safety parameter we can build into our infrastructure. He looked down, his green skin turning more ashen as his eyes closed. But most of them refused to talk about it. "Look," Ventress said, interrupting the discussion. "Stop the shuttle." The flight paused, hovering in midair. Ventress took out a scope, then stood by the cockpit. "There it is," she said. "Come here, Kenobi." "What is it?" She handed over the scope and pointed at an angle off the flight path. Obi-Wan brought the scope to his eyes, the target area already highlighted in a bright green box within the display. The scope zoomed in, its internal computer interpolating details about the damage so fast that Obi-Wan couldn't digest it all. But the visual highlight was enough. This clearly was the remains of a strut built to secure the city block between spires, a charred burst indicating the center of an explosion. "The blast points," she said. And as if by design, 5 further green boxes lit up, each framing clear burn marks. "How many do you count?" 6. 6 blast points, each precisely laid out with exact spacing and angles to one another, probably calculated by computer. The destruction on the shredded end of the massive strut blanketed over a lot of the finer evidence, but Obi-Wan had seen enough in his time, including his few weeks being around the clones, to understand that Ventress was right. And bounty hunters, pirates, mercenaries, while it remained possible that they could do something like this, the odds of that felt low, especially after Dex's report. 6 blast points distributed specifically to maximize damage given the load on the strut. I would consider this military precision, wouldn't you? Perhaps, Obi-Wan said, one eye on Iam in front of the craft. Droids can be precise as well. That they can. Such an astute observation. I can see why they call you a master. She turned to Iam as well. And this is just a single strut. Who knows what we'll find elsewhere? Though an exhale of frustration fought to come out, Obi-Wan caught it, and instead offered the scope to Ventress in a controlled gesture. This certainly requires more investigation. Indeed, she took the scope back with a harsh tug that pulled on his fingers. If there are no objections, Iam said, I would like to land and show the destruction on the surface level. Please do. It is imperative that I see the entire range of destruction before I start my investigation. I promise I will get to the bottom of this. The shuttle chair creaked as Obi-Wan shifted in his seat to look directly at Ventress. Perhaps through mutual cooperation, we can find some common ground between our governments. Cooperation? Ventress settled back into her chair, legs crossed and arms folded. Light from outside reflected in the shuttle's cramped quarters, and Obi-Wan caught a glint of metallic reflection by her hip before she adjusted her cloak. Certainly. if you can win me over. And there you have it. That's our first excerpt from the new novel, Brotherhood. Honestly, it's not as ground-shattering as last week's excerpt from Shadows of the Sith, where we saw Anakin's Force ghost appear to Luke. However, not everything needs to be ground-shattering. This, I'm pretty excited for, personally. Asajj Ventress is one of my favorite characters in the Clone Wars. She's just as snarky and sarcastic as Obi-Wan, so the two of them together, there's potential for some really funny dialogue there.
We're outmatched.
You want to run?
I learned from watching you.
Funny.
Also, if I'm understanding things correctly, it sounds like there's essentially been an attack on civilians in Cato Neimoidia. Now, we know the Clone Wars have begun. Obi-Wan even mentions having just briefly been around the clones for a few weeks. So this must be occurring, a couple weeks after the events of Episode 2. And I can totally see Sidious planning an attack on civilians in order to, get the Neimoidians even more agitated and ready to fight with the Republic. That's Sidious's whole MO, right? He plays both sides, he gets both sides angry at one another, stirs up the conflict right when it's about to settle down. We actually see a lot of this in the Clone Wars when Padme goes to Raxus, which is actually the separatist capital world, akin to Coruscant for the Republic. Right when they're about to enter peace talks with the Republic, there's an assassination, and as we later find out, Sidious is again preventing peace. Now, the question I think a lot of us are probably asking is, while Kenobi's sitting here talking with Ventress, where is Anakin? Is Anakin on the mission with Kenobi at this point? Because this book clearly takes place before the Battle of Christophsis, and that's when Anakin takes on Ahsoka as his Padawan. I think he's probably with Padme somewhere. Then again, it's also possible that he's just investigating this Neimoidian disaster somewhere else. But personally, I gotta lean toward he's probably with Padme, doing something he shouldn't be doing. Another little thing that I like from this excerpt is that we get this mention of Dex, which I can only assume this is Dexter Jettster, right, from the diner scene in Episode 2. He seems to be an expert on munitions. He gave Obi-Wan advice on that really, really niche Kaminoan dart, and he knew exactly what it was. So, stands to reason that Dex would also be pretty good with explosives, and it sounds like he's maybe given a preliminary report to Obi-Wan on this before he went in. And that's really it, guys. I'm not seeing a whole lot more here in this excerpt. It definitely got me interested, because again, like I mentioned earlier, I think Asajj and Obi-Wan, when they're together especially, it's just a really funny, witty, banter-filled dynamic. So, personally, I'm really excited for this book, and just based on the title, I'm sure we're going to get a lot more Anakin. Now, it's interesting to me that this book is actually coming out in May of 2022, which is also when the Kenobi series is coming out. If we look down here, the book is available May 10th. That's about 2 weeks before the Kenobi series comes out, which we now know is going to be a little bit later than we originally thought. I wonder if there's going to be anything in this novel that maybe we'll have a call out in the series, or maybe it has nothing to do with the series. But again, I think the timing is way too serendipitous to just be pure coincidence. I think, just based on the title, Brotherhood, there's going to be a lot of stuff in this book that reinforces what we saw in the Clone Wars, the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and I think it's going to make the Kenobi series hit even harder than we already know it's going to. That's really all I've got. Let me know if you guys saw anything down below that I didn't. I'm pretty excited for this book. I'm excited for the Kenobi series. Honestly, it's a great time to be a Star Wars fan. There's a lot going on. What did you think of this small excerpt? Did it pique your interest or not really do it for you? Are you excited to see the Anakin-Obi-Wan dynamic, or are you maybe more excited about the Asajj-Obi-Wan dynamic? Let me know in the comments below. I also want to give a huge shout out to Venamis. He's an amazing artist. He was kind enough to let me use a lot of his work in this video. If you haven't ever heard of Venamis, go check him out on Instagram. I'll put his tag right here. He's got some seriously amazing stuff. I've even got some autographed stuff of his hanging above my TV. Again, a huge thank you to Venamis. If you haven't already, be sure to like this video. It really helps the YouTube algorithm actually put the video out there for people to see. And if you've been watching this video and the other videos I've done the last couple weeks, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Again, it helps me know that I'm not just shouting into the void, and it's definitely harder than I thought to get a YouTube channel up and running, so I really appreciate everyone's support. Thanks, guys, and may the Force be with you.